Ready. Play.
Hi everyone, we're here to review Joao Fonseca's three-set win, 2-6, 6-4, 6-2 over Federico Coria in Buenos Aires at the Argentina Open. I'm pleased to be joined once again by Damien and also by Vanch. Damien, give us your first thoughts on that encounter.
I mean, we mentioned kind of like the flashbacks of Alcaraz Coria, and I guess the match gave us that as well. Like Fede is obviously super fast and like he's a good fighter. You know, also the crowd. I mean, both ways was incredible. But I do think that Fede definitely like finds himself well in these sort of settings too. So he was kind of peaking there. We can't expect Joao Fonseca to just be a god every single match. Obviously, he is just 18 and he's going to have some mishaps. He is going to have matches where, yeah, he's just making 100 unforced errors and doesn't quite know how to win with his B game yet. But I mean, in the end, he was still able to prevail, which I guess is just another round. But also, finally, he kind of wins a match where he's not firing on all cylinders. This year, it hasn't really happened to him yet, right? I mean, this is pretty much the second time, well, actually, the third time, I guess, that he is not on that god level, and the first time he wins with it.
Okay, so that's good news, I guess. Vanch, what happened in the first set and even stages at the beginning of the second, I think, when he had to fend off some break points? At that point, I was thinking, oh, here we go. Maybe we're going to come back to earth with Joao, but he does prevail in the end. But yeah, I'd like to know about Joao in that first set, really, in particular.
Well, Coria was doing a good job of getting a lot of balls back, hitting with a lot of depth. He was pretty quick around the court. He was just making Joao play the extra shot, and sometimes Joao was a little too trigger happy. He was going for it a bit too early in rallies, which can happen from time to time. You know, as Damien said, he's still raw, and he's not expected to kind of be just like this winning machine every single set he plays. Like, he's gonna have a few blips. And so I think we saw that a little bit, but then I think he did a good job of staying pretty calm and not panicking, and he actually lost his serve at the end of the first set as well. So it kind of it went on. The patch went on a little bit longer than I was expecting, but he kind of righted the ship pretty well afterwards.
Yeah, he did indeed. So the turning of the tide occurred, of course, at the beginning of the second set. And I don't know, I just sort of had a feeling once that break of serve occurred at the beginning of the second, it just felt like it felt like the tide had turned. I thought, I can't see Coria winning from here, but maybe that's my recency bias, Damien.
Maybe. I mean, obviously there was still a question of like what happens if Joao gets nervous a little bit. Definitely the break that he got at like 4-2 in the third, I think that was just so helpful. Just having that insurance, not really having to worry yet about what can happen if Coria breaks back. Obviously he did kind of like work very hard for that break too. There was that point where like he lobs Fede, and I'm not sure if it was a game point or a deuce, but basically stuff was happening there. And yeah, I think maybe if he didn't get that one, there still would have been some questions to answer. But yeah, for the time being, I mean, he just moved on. Wasn't really close to losing in this one, but it's still good to see a win where he's just not firing on all cylinders. And there's actually a moment there when it seems like he might be done here.
Yeah, indeed. I saw Tennis Insights as well getting pretty excited as well about Joao Fonseca, as everyone is. Is there anything, Vanch, that you thought in terms of the stats to reflect on that tell us quite a bit about how that match unfolded?
Not really. I mean, it's more a tale of two halves. You'll see in the first set a lot more unforced errors than winners, and you'll see Coria in the positive, and then you'll just see a direct shift. Where he's just going to be he's more often patient before pulling the trigger. He was winning some more of those longer rallies. He was just like trusting his legs a little bit more, which I think is good to see, because you don't want offense all the day. It can be so alluring for him to just pull the trigger at any given moment, just because he just has that kind of power. But he's able to kind of rein it in, play a bit more patiently, trade a little bit more cross court, wait for the throw in those higher, heavier balls before then stepping in and going on attack, which he's just so good at. So yeah, no, I thought it was just a tale of two halves where we saw him go through a little bit of adversity and then come through. So I don't really think there's one thing in particular. But
any final thoughts on that match before we move on, Damien?
Yeah, not really. I mean, we already said that like Fonseca Rune would be fantastic, but even Fonseca Navona, we have some history. Last year, of course, Rio, it was Mariano who stopped Joao in the quarters, and that was like a beautiful first set from Fonseca, and he kind of gets tired after that. Navona very good at taking advantage for sure. So I think either match will be really exciting, but yeah, it's kind of now the pressure to me is more on Holger, if they play. Like he's the guy who was supposed to be right up there with Alcaraz and Sinner, and now he's facing the danger of like just being, substituted by someone who is, of course, how many years? 3 years he's younger than he is.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't trust Holger at all. So it's going to be rough for him. He has to go through both Navona and Fonseca now back to back in order to make the semis. It's definitely an insane draw. And
Tough draw,
yeah,
yeah.
at this
That's tough.
point, I just don't really know if there's any match in this event where I'm going to be like, yeah, I mean, Fonseca is clearly losing here. Fonseca is definitely without a chance.
I actually, before we move on, I do want to just ask Vanch about Zhao's serve. I know that obviously on clay and aces are not the tell-all, but it's very interesting to see Coria getting 8 aces to Zhao's 1 ace today. I'm not sure what you think about Zhao's serve, or was his return? Just talk about the serve and return sort of dynamic for Zhao, Vanch.
Mm. Well, Joao has a very good like kick serve, so he likes to use that on the ad side. It gets up pretty high on the returner. It's one that he can rely on, like even on second serves. David and I were doing his first match against Echeverry, and he hit some really good second serves in that just tailed out from the returner. But I think at times in the first set he wasn't adjusting his return position as much as I thought he would. But then later on, later on he was getting way more returns back in play and just playing a little bit more high percentage, dropping back a little bit, giving himself a little bit more time to set up his big swings, and then it just kind of worked. It just kind of clicked in gear, and then he was returning better, he was serving better. Confidence from the baseline obviously grew and grew, and then by the third set there was no question like who was the better player.
I would have to check the stats on that, but I'd assume Coria is pretty tough to ace too. I mean, just with the returning position.
Okay, yeah, but it's just a funny, quirky stat. 8-1
for sure.
The dynamic there. But anyway, as you highlighted, Damien, Zhao progresses to the quarterfinals in Buenos Aires, where he will be playing the winner of Holger Rune and Mariano Navoni later on. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.